Hi everyone, and welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And we're on day 2 of our article about the Artemis Space Program. Now, we started off yesterday by talking about the Apollo space program. Quite famous, you've probably heard of it. It was the program to kind of by degrees and step by step put a man on the moon.
That's absolutely right. Back in 1961, this was the plan of the U.S. President Kennedy. He wanted to put a man on the moon and return that man or those people safely by the end of that decade, by the end of the 1960s. And they did it. In July of 1969, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, they finally got to the moon. Now, why was it called Apollo? Well, actually, that goes back to the ancient Greek god of the sun. The first NASA program was Mercury, another Greek god, and then they had Gemini, the twins, because it was 2 astronauts together, and then the third one was Apollo.
There we go. Now, NASA learned many lessons and improved the technology for space travel a lot. So by the Apollo 11 mission, the successful one, all the equipment was ready. But that was then, this is now, and NASA wants to learn more about space. It has created the Artemis Program. Artemis is another one of these Greek gods from mythology. It's actually Apollo's twin sister, and she is the goddess of the moon.
Okay, so the new program we'll all be reading and talking about is Artemis. Artemis will likely send a woman and the next man to the moon by 2024. So the first woman and the next man will be landing on the moon in just a few years from now.
Right, and the idea with this new launch is that people will be able to explore the moon in new ways. They might go to the moon's south pole for the first time. And just like the Apollo one was doing a step-by-step technology improvement, this is a step-by-step program of trying things out for the next big challenge, going to Mars.
Oh, okay. So if they're going to the moon in 3 years, we probably can't make that trip, but maybe we can get to Mars.
That's right.
Or maybe we can't, but young
read
people
through
can.
Today's article and see how it's all going to work.
Reading.
The Artemis Space Program, to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Like Apollo, Artemis will be tested in stages. Artemis 1 will be a test flight of NASA's new rocket, the Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket to date. It will send an Orion spacecraft to orbit the moon for 6 days and return, though no crew will be aboard. Artemis 2 will send astronauts to circle the moon in an Orion craft and return to Earth. This trip will mark the farthest any human has traveled into space. Lastly, Artemis 3 will carry up to 4 astronauts to Gateway, a small space station in lunar orbit. The astronauts will then descend to the moon, where they'll investigate the South Pole and search for water. They'll learn to live and work for an extended time on the moon as a test for a future visit to Mars. The entire mission will last for 30 days and will help determine whether a mission to Mars could succeed. The astronauts will be able to solve problems in a more relaxed environment, knowing that Earth is only a 3-day journey away. In contrast, it takes 3 years to fly from Earth to Mars and back. Artemis's discoveries may one day allow humans to fly to Mars and beyond.
All right, so our article begins for today by talking more about this Artemis program. It says, like Apollo, Artemis will be tested in stages. Yeah, Apollo 11 was the one that landed on the moon, but Apollos 1 through 10 were testing out the rockets and going further and further into space, testing the different maneuvers that they were going to do to get to the moon successfully. So by Apollo 11, they'd kind of tried everything out, at least once. It was done in stages. When we talk about a stage here, we're not talking about a large raised area where actors or musicians or performers will stand. That, of course, is a stage. No, here a stage is basically, it's kind of like a section or a step or a chapter. We talk about doing things in stages when we're kind of taking one step and trying things out. We're not doing it all at the same time from beginning to end. We're kind of moving slowly in very clear sections from the beginning to the end. But each one of those stages, we're doing something different, and we're building, and we're moving on. For example, the last stage in making a birthday cake is decorating it with icing sugar. You've already mixed everything and baked it. You have a cake. But now the final thing is you decorate it with icing sugar. Actually, maybe the final stage is putting the candles in the top and then eating it. That is the final stage. But we do, often with cooking and things, we do things in stages, different steps in a process.
So the first step of Artemis, let's check it out. The article says Artemis 1, or first, I guess, but Artemis 1 will be a test flight of NASA's new rocket, the Space Launch System. And we learn this is the most powerful rocket to date. Now, the way we've written that sentence, we've cut out a couple of words, and I'm going to explain how we do it right now. So what we've just done is used a sentence which had a relative clause on it. Okay, it said the Space Launch System, which is the most powerful thing to date. Okay, the most powerful rocket to date. However, we can get rid of the words which is, the pronoun, and the be verb. And we can do this to a relative clause when we've got the two things are the same, so the pronoun doesn't matter, and the verb used in the second clause, the relative clause, is the be verb. We can drop it right out. We can also call this kind of thing an appositive. Michelle is a student at Taipei First Girls High School, one of the best high schools in the country. We could say Michelle is a student at Taipei First Girls High School, which is one of the best high schools in the country, but we can cut out the which is. So we're saying this is one of the most powerful or the most powerful rocket launching systems to date.
Ah, okay. If something is to date, we're kind of getting the idea here that they've had this before in the past. There are things like this in history, but we're talking about up until now, to this date, to this day, until the present time, or so far, this is the most powerful one. We could compare it to similar ones, maybe very similar ones, from a little while ago or a long time ago, but if we compare it, it's special or it's unique or it's something that's a little bit different up until the present day. All right, so the most powerful rocket to date, the Space Launch System.
That's right.
I guess it's just going to be the SLS.
Something like that.
They love calling things names like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's it going to do? We learn it will send an Orion spacecraft. Okay. Another Greek piece of mythology there. Sure. It'll send an Orion spacecraft to orbit the moon for 6 days and return, though no crew will be aboard. So very sensible. They're going to test this thing with a spacecraft without people on it. If something goes wrong, no human lives will be lost. It's a spacecraft. A spacecraft is simply a vehicle that goes into space. Something like that.
All right. And it will orbit the moon. Okay. So if something orbits something, basically it travels in a circle or in a circle-like path around something. We often use this to talk about how things move through space. Of course, the Earth orbits the sun. We make one orbit every year. And satellites that we send up will orbit things as well. But pilots might use this. If a pilot is flying around an airport, to waiting for their turn to land, they might say, we're orbiting the airport. Helicopters might orbit a building, if they're looking to see if there's a fire, the police are using a helicopter to try to catch someone, they might orbit a certain area. Basically, you're just moving in a path through the air or through space around some other thing that is more still or standing still. For example, we could say the satellite orbits the Earth every 36 hours. So every 36 hours, you would look down from that satellite and see the same place, and then 36 hours later, you'd be back after making a full circle or an orbit. We can use it as a noun too.
We can indeed. So we said that there are no crew members, no astronauts aboard this particular Orion spacecraft. Aboard just means on but you only use it to talk about a vehicle. So you could say someone is aboard a ship, aboard a plane. It means they are on it, maybe kind of inside it as well. They could be standing, if it was a ship, they could be on deck or under the deck. Both are aboard. If you're aboard a plane, you've gone through the door. You're in the seat or in the aisle or something like that. Here's another example. The train pulled away from the station once all the passengers were aboard, meaning they were on the train. So that's Artemis 1. What's the next stage?
Ah, that's right. Artemis 2, so the second mission in the Artemis program, the second stage. Artemis 2 will send astronauts to circle the moon in an Orion craft and return to Earth. So basically the same kind of mission, but this time instead of operating it by computer, they'll actually have people in there. So this is going to make sure that all the oxygen works and the food preparation works and all the stuff that keeps the people alive works once they know that the rocket itself is safe and will work.
Okay, and this is going to be quite a big moment for humankind as we see this trip, so the Artemis 2, will mark the furthest any human has traveled into space.
Wow.
So it's, even though it's just going to go around in a big circle, no one's been that far before. No one's been up on this kind of rocket for as long before. So yeah, that'll be a record.
Very cool. And I guess it will be orbiting the moon further away than the Apollo capsules were. Lastly, Artemis 3 will carry up to 4 astronauts to Gateway, a small space station in lunar orbit. Wow, how cool is that? I don't know when they're going to build Gateway, but they'll put that up there around the moon. It'll be sort of their stop-off place before they go down to the surface of the moon. This will be 4 astronauts, and of course, this will be Artemis 3. All right, they will be going up. They will carry up to 4 astronauts. We read that in that sentence. Yeah, that sentence said it will carry up to 4 astronauts, which is kind of interesting because it gives us the idea that they're not sure that will be the total number, but 4 will be the maximum number. That's basically how we use this phrase up to. It could be anything less, but this is the highest number. Often when you take an elevator, there might be a sign that says the elevator holds up to 8 people. So you can have 1 person, 7 people, 8 people, but not 9 or 10. That would be too many. So anything up to this is the maximum number. Anything lower is okay.
So we see this ship, Artemis 3, is going to go to a space station Gateway in lunar orbit. So that's orbit as used as a noun, the actual path. And lunar means it's going round the moon. That's what the word lunar means, related to the moon. The lunar surface is the surface of the moon. The lunar calendar is the calendar based on the phases and changing of the shape of the moon. As seen from Earth, of course, the moon doesn't really change shape. It's just what we see. So they go up there to this Gateway. What do they do next?
Well then, from Gateway, the astronauts will then descend to the moon where they'll investigate the South Pole and search for water. So this sounds like a safer way to do things, right? In the old days, they would go up in 2 ships. One would go down to the moon. The other one would continue to orbit. Then they'd have to meet up in space and come home all together. With Gateway, they can kind of park one of their spacecraft, use another one to go down to the moon. It takes a little longer, but much safer. When you go down to something, you can also use this verb to descend. Basically, to descend is to go down or to move downwards. If you're in an elevator and you're going from a top floor down to a lower floor, you are descending in that elevator. In the same way that when your airplane is coming to the end of the journey and you're going to land in the place that you're arriving at, the airplane will descend, go from a higher place down to the ground. It's moving downwards.
Yeah, I guess almost with the moon, it's not. I always think of it as moving towards the center rather than going down, because in space, a lot of those kind of directions don't mean so much.
Yes.
But there we go. The article continues. They'll learn to live and work for an extended time on the moon as a test for a future visit to Mars. So it says they're going to stay there for an extended time. So not just 10 minutes, not just a day, they're going to be there for a while because the time is extended. This adjective extended means it's longer, it's prolonged in some way. We could talk about extended in distance, but here it's extended in time. It's a longer period of time. For example, John is going on an extended holiday to New Zealand. So not just a week, he's going for maybe a few months. The time will be longer. And we're going to find out just how long in this next sentence.
That's right. The entire mission, it says, will last for 30 days and will help determine whether a mission to Mars could succeed. So the early Apollo missions only lasted for a few days, and they were certainly not on the moon for longer than maybe 2 days, I think, maximum. So this one will be much longer. But of course, going to Mars will be extended even more. We're talking a lot longer. So if they can do it for 6 days, that's a good first stage or first step.
And this 30-day thing, they'll be doing all kinds of things, not just walking around, but also testing out the equipment, doing things, finding stuff out, basically practicing. And as we see in the article, the astronauts will be able to solve problems in a more relaxed environment, knowing that Earth is only a 3-day journey away. Let's look at the word relaxed. So here we're using the word relaxed to describe a place or a thing. You could describe a person as being relaxed. That person is chilled out, calm, not worried. But if a place or an event is relaxed, it's kind of free from tension and anxiety. There's no real hurry. No one's worried about what's happening or trying to rush to get things done. For example, we could say, this coffee shop is never busy on Sunday mornings. So it's always very relaxed there. Nobody's rushing around. There aren't long queues. You can take your time, get a seat, enjoy a coffee, and the staff can take their time to make it. So this kind of relaxed atmosphere will help them prepare for a journey where things are a little more difficult.
Yes, a journey is basically a trip, a voyage. When you go somewhere, we're not really talking about when you go to the store and come back home 10 minutes later. No, it's probably an extended trip. You're going further away from home, maybe staying there overnight or even longer. When you go on holiday, that would be a journey. When you and your friends take a trip to the beach, it could be a short journey, but generally we're talking about a longer trip like you might take on a vacation or something like that. For example, Buster and his friends went on a dangerous but exciting journey across the Sahara Desert.
Wow.
Not quite as dangerous as going to the moon, but still quite challenging, although on the moon you can't travel by camel.
Not yet. But anyway, so we're saying that from the moon to go back to the Earth via this gateway place, it's only going to be a few days' journey.
Right.
That's fairly simple. You're not too worried. You can get back in a hurry if you need to. But as the article points out, in contrast, it takes 3 years to fly from Earth to Mars and back.
Excuse me, three
3
weeks?
years.
3 months.
3 years.
3 years?
Yes.
So if you forget something, you're in big trouble.
Indeed.
Oh dear. Pack carefully.
Indeed.
Oh,
So we
forgot
say...
my iPhone charger. What do I do?
That's it.
I'm in trouble.
No music for you.
Wow.
So in contrast, this phrase is going to be used to present a contrast with what's gone before. We said it's just a few days from the moon to Earth. It's a very relaxed atmosphere. In contrast, so showing something very different, it's a 3-year trip to Mars. Well, there we go. So, how do we conclude the article?
Well, as you can see, if it's a 3-year journey to Mars, you would definitely want to try these things out first. And of course, that, as we've explained, is Artemis's main goal. This program, this mission, Artemis's discoveries may one day allow humans to fly to Mars and beyond. Yes, if they can get to the moon and back and do all that in a relatively easy, safe way, then going to the Mars is only going to be really, really, really difficult and not impossible because, you know, it will take 3 years to go to Mars. So it's a lot more challenging.
Indeed. Well, that's the end of the article. Let's go now to today's For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
All right, so our chat question is about basically the same idea that NASA has with doing the Artemis mission. It's a test. It's a way to make sure things work before they try something more challenging, more difficult, or more dangerous. So here's our chat question. What kinds of things should you do tests on before you do the real thing?
I mean, it goes without saying, you test absolutely everything. There's no point in going, oh, that's all right. That bit'll work. We don't need to check that.
Yeah.
No, you test everything and you test it under the absolute worst possible circumstances with every single thing going wrong at once.
Okay.
And that's how you do it in the test, because you basically just create the worst possible situation. If the equipment, if the people, if they can all get through that, then they might be able to get through the real thing.
Okay.
But you test everything, you test it to its limits, you test it all going wrong at once, and then you test it again and again and again and again.
Okay, so what kinds of things would you want to test out?
Oh, for a space trip, you test the oxygen, you test the launch mechanism, you test whether you can kind of attach to gateway, send the next thing down, land on the moon. I could go on, but we're going to run out of time. So that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. For English For You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Vocabulary Review. Stage. In science class, we studied the life stages of a frog from egg to adult. Orbit. The sun lights different parts of the moon as it orbits Earth. This is why the moon's shape looks different each night. Aboard. The train was nearly empty. Only 2 other people were aboard. Extended. Since she missed her flight, Karen took an extended vacation in the country. Relaxed. After a hard day of work, I like to read a book in the relaxed setting of a coffee shop. Journey. I took a journey by train to Taichung for the weekend. It only took 2 hours to get there.
智慧小补帖
Spacecraft. Lunar. Descend.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作。活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net